When I was feeling stuck in my life several years ago, caught in these anxiety patterns and unable to move forward, there was one principle that helped me to heal my nervous system and live my life again. So, if you're someone who feels like every little thing causes anxiety and the smallest situation can devolve into a low level meltdown, then this video is for you because I'm going to be sharing one of the most effective ways to build resilience and re engage with life so that you can go back to having rich, soul fulfilling experiences that you were meant for. I'm Karina, a health and movement coach, and welcome to my channel where we discuss practical ways to elevate our wellness from a mind, body, soul perspective. Oftentimes, we think that in order to de stress, we need to calm ourselves down. And that would seem like the logical and obvious conclusion. But then from that place, we start thinking, how do I go about that? We might think, I need to meditate more, I need to quiet my mind. And we may also feel that if we're not able to handle the slightest stressor, then we need to be so gentle with ourselves that we can't challenge ourselves at all. And I was definitely of that mindset several years ago. I kept having this pattern in my life where I would work myself so hard to the point of having overachiever PTSD and burnout. Does that sound familiar to you? And so I finally decided to take a hiatus from my job. I was grateful to have the support system to be able to do that. And I started to do a lot of meditating. I was doing a lot of quote unquote resting. My only forms of exercise were really restorative yoga and short walks because I didn't want to stress my body out too much. But it turns out that none of this actually worked. Instead of feeling restored after several months of this, I actually felt weaker. It felt like every little thing in my life was an emotional or a physical trigger. Someone would say something as an offhand comment and I would get super sensitive about it. I would have to stop my already short walks even earlier because my toes would cramp up. And that's when I heard a comment on a podcast that would completely change the trajectory of my wellness journey. And I can't remember exactly who said this, but it definitely stayed with me. And it was that people generally assume that we are always in an upregulated nervous system state in our modern society, and that we need to constantly focus on down-regulating, on calming ourselves down. But in fact, there is a very real place for consciously and mindfully upregulating our nervous system as a way to help it to function better. And this was like a seed that was planted in my mind that drove me to study deeply how the body and the nervous system work. And I found that this comment was true, that in order to build resilience, we actually need to challenge the body and we need to place healthy stressors on it in mindful and conscious ways. And that is because of how our trauma response works. You may have heard that there are three main ways that we respond to trauma: fight, flight, and freeze. And there's also another one that's emerging in the literature called tend and befriend. But what can often happen in the aftermath of a trauma, especially if we were not permitted to react in a bodily way to what we were experiencing at the time, is that our body and our mind get stuck in this trauma experience and the memory of it. So we're now reacting in that same way to innocent situations and stimuli. Dr. Peter Levine, who founded a trauma release tool called somatic experiencing, talks about a story about a client who had a tonsillectomy early in her life. And because she was held down and she couldn't move during that experience, she was traumatized by it. So in their sessions together, Dr. Levine guided her to visualize a tiger running after her. And initially she froze and she couldn't move. But then when Dr. Levine guided her to run and she started to do that in her mind, now all of a sudden she was actually doing something about the threat of the tiger to save herself. That allowed her to feel empowered, and then that frozen anxiety-based state began to break. So whether it's a tonsillectomy or a super stressful job or any other traumatic experience, and maybe we wouldn't even necessarily label these things as traumatic experiences, but to the body they are, and we're in these situations and we feel trapped like we can't do anything about them, then they become internalized and we start reacting in the same way even when that traumatic experience isn't there. So that's what was happening to me, is that I would constantly find myself in these situations where I would run myself into the ground, I would burn myself out, and I felt trapped. I felt stuck, like I couldn't get out of that experience. So then when I changed my environment and I had comparatively fewer stressors, my body was still reacting in the same ways. So no amount of meditating or resting was going to get me out of that state. I had to empower myself in a very visceral, body-based way. So I started to become very aware of how my body was moving and what my postural habits were. I used my study of how the body works, biomechanics, and how the nervous system works to support me in this. And that allowed me to then safely engage in a more rigorous movement practice, like more intensive cardio and some weight and resistance training. And all the while, I was not trying to push myself beyond what I could handle. I was also not trying to escape the physical experience of challenging myself. I was totally present and grounded. And from that place, I could understand what it was like to go to my edge, where I was feeling sensation and challenge without pain or strain. And that was what led me to become a health and movement coach, because I wanted others to experience what it was like to safely and mindfully build up physical resilience and therefore experience mental and emotional resilience as well. Our vagus nerve, which is the nerve that is responsible for modulating our stress response, in order for that to function optimally, it needs to be able to shift back and forth between the rest and digest parasympathetic nervous system state and the fight or flight sympathetic nervous system state. In fact, the vagus nerve's real job is to allow a little bit of that rest and digest state to come online while we are in the fight or flight response in order to modulate it so that our fight or flight response doesn't totally deplete us. So they're really both online at the same time, checking each other. So if we never put ourselves into that fight or flight state, then our rest and digest isn't able to function as well either. So when we're afraid to challenge ourselves, then our vagus nerve is in this state where it wants to dip its toe into the water, but it's afraid to do so, and in this constant state of fear and anxiety. And when I was growing up, I used to really love this song called Jump in the Pool by Friendly Fires. And some of the lyrics go, sitting by the poolside, staring into glowing blue, swimsuit issues with my toes curled in the grooves. And that's describing the state that we're in very well, where we're constantly in the state of fear, our toes are curled, we're afraid to jump in the pool, even though that's what we really want to do. And being in the state of constant anxiety where we want to do this, but we can't, is actually so much worse than just jumping into the pool. Now, we don't want to be jumping into that pool when we're still feeling the anxiety. I am not a fan of the feel the fear and do it anyway paradigm. That is a great way to create more trauma. What we want to do is prepare our bodies first. We want to engage in more mindful and deeper patterns of breathing. I have a video linked here on how to do that. We also want to fuel our body with the right nutrients. I have tons of videos on this topic, including the one linked here, that will show you how to do that. And then from that place, we're going to slowly introduce progressively more challenging experiences for the body. We could start with some fast walking, some light jogging, 5 or 8 pound weights, just a few reps, and that's it. And then gradually work our way up from there. And all the while, we are super aware and mindful of the bodily sensations that we are experiencing in the moment. That means that we know exactly when something feels like just a challenge versus when we've gone too far, because we're no longer numbing ourselves to pain. We're no longer escaping from it. In the song that I mentioned earlier, he says, I breathe in, don't look back, don't pretend we'll never take control again. The fear is falling away, keep breathing, keep holding on. The best way to build resilience so that you can not only handle life, but also fully participate in the inevitable twists and turns that are always leading you to your highest fulfillment, the best way to do that is to move your body in progressively more challenging ways. And of course, you want to incorporate rest and meditating and all of those tools as well. I certainly do in my daily life, but just remember that you need both. And if you want some more structured tools for how to find balance on your wellness path, you can check out the Masterclass for Superhuman Level Health. This gives you a step-by-step plan for how to have a more resilient and radiant body. And the link to that is in the description box. If you resonated with this video, please give it a like and share it with someone else who could benefit. And if you want to learn about more ways to feel amazing in your body and your mind, then feel free to subscribe to this channel. Lots of love, and I'll talk to you soon.